You're watching WKOW 27 News at 10 with Greg Jeske, Amber Noggle, Chief Meteorologist Bob Lindmeyer, and Sports with Lance Beezer. We've got you covered.
Immigration will be a big issue in this year's presidential election.
It's certainly been a big part of Donald Trump's campaign, which he repeated in Indiana tonight.
We're going to build the wall, we're going to have Mexico pay for the wall, and we're going to have strong borders, and we're going to have people come into our country, but they're going to come in legally.
Now, Trump's position on immigration has really hit home for one of Wisconsin's oldest industries.
A majority of the workforce on the state's dairy farms is comprised of immigrants with no path towards legal status, let alone citizenship. Greg Newman is digging deeper tonight into the battle to change that amid a hostile political climate.
For 12 years, Juan has worked on the same Sauk County dairy farm.
He started out milking and since then has moved on and does feeding and a lot of our cow care.
Juan allows his boss, Mitch Brunig, to talk for him. That's because despite his long tenure here that includes working and living on the property and raising 4 kids that are American citizens, the native of Uruguay still has no legal status in the United States. Neither do most of the immigrant workers who make up more than half of the workforce for the state's $44 billion a year dairy industry.
If you go back and look at the dairy industry and agriculture in general, there's just a shortage of rural labor.
Brunig grew up on this farm, but his parents didn't encourage him to follow in their footsteps.
In the 80s, the dairy industry in the state of Wisconsin was in decline. California was growing. And, basically our parents said, go get a different job, go get a different industry.
In the 1990s, when California overtook us in milk production, I think there are a lot of glum farmers out there kind of deciding, where do we go from here?
With a shrinking rural workforce to choose from, the industry looked to the massive influx of immigrant workers.
Since that time, we've turned around.
We are the dairy state, and dairy is growing in the state of Wisconsin, and we're actually closing the gap on California every day on the amount of milk we produce.
But that production comes from a group of workers who are primarily here illegally. If Juan or any of the other immigrant workers were only here temporarily, in other words, they only worked on the farm 3 months at a time, they could get a visa and have legal status. But it's because they're here year-round that they can't.
Historically, agricultural visas have been tied to harvest seasons for certain cash crops, primarily. The whole system has been set up to provide temporary visas for short-term workers to do those harvesting activities.
As we know, the dairy industry is not seasonal in nature. Cows have to be milked 365 days a year.
Madison immigration attorney Gloria Lee Lopez deals with the reality these workers face on a regular basis.
There is no visa classification under the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act, at all for dairy workers.
The only avenue to fix that problem runs through the halls of Congress. The U.S. Senate overwhelmingly passed an immigration bill in 2013 that would have given these workers a path to permanent legal status.
And it was enormously frustrating to see the House abdicate its responsibilities and not take up a debate on that.
House Speaker Paul Ryan supports a path to legal status for these workers, but says he won't take action on immigration reform this year because President Obama issued an executive order in late 2014 extending legal status protections on his own.
So this will have to wait for the next president, because when you have a tense relationship like this, where a president is going around Congress and trying to unilaterally write laws, violating the Constitution, it doesn't make for the kind of working relationship you need.
So workers like Juan continue to live in limbo. And while immigration authorities aren't targeting dairy farms, there is trepidation that could change, especially if Republican candidates Donald Trump or Ted Cruz become president. Both have promised to increase the size and scope of deportations.
And the reality is, we need these workers here to do this, or we would not have the dairy industry that we have now.
They just are people that, contribute. They have jobs. They're not getting into trouble, and so they're really, really important to our farm.
In Sauk County, Greg Newman, 27 News.
26 states, including Wisconsin, are challenging President Obama's executive order expanding legal status to the parents of children who are citizens. But even if the Supreme Court upholds the president's order, many dairy farm workers would still only have legal status for a period of 3 years.
In the court of public opinion, the last Marquette Law School poll had 82% of Wisconsin voters saying that immigrants working in the state should be able to pay for legal citizenship or guest worker status.